On the morning of the 16th of October, 1946, a tall, lean figure dressed in a simple gray suit stepped into a repurposed gymnasium in Nuremberg. Before him, a wooden gallows loomed, and he asked for permission to speak. The American sergeant inclined his head. Straightening his posture and lifting his chin, the man uttered, "I salute you, my Germany." In the next instant, the trapdoor released beneath his feet, and Colonel General Alfred Jodl's name became etched in history as one of the most debated executions of the 20th century. Yet there is a chapter many never hear. Just a few years after his hanging, a Munich court re-examined the evidence and quietly cleared him of all charges, only for that verdict to be reversed under intense political pressure. Even today, scholars clash over whether Jodl, who authorized orders leading to the deaths of millions, truly deserved the noose, or whether he was simply the most convenient scapegoat for the Allies. The reality, as history shows, is darker and more complex than either interpretation wishes to acknowledge. To trace how Alfred Jodl ended up on that gallows, one must begin in a tranquil Bavarian town in 1890, where he was born into a lineage steeped in military tradition. Soldiers in his family treated service as devoutly as others treat faith. His father commanded artillery, and his grandfather had served the Bavarian crown. From the moment he could walk, Jodl's path was meticulously outlined, as if written in precise military script. He entered cadet school as a child, swore his first oath during adolescence, and by 1910 he had earned a lieutenant's commission in the Bavarian army, already gaining a reputation for intellect, icy composure, and obsessive attention to detail. His instructors recalled a young man who corrected their technicalities, a trait that would shadow his life and eventually place a rope around his neck. When the First World War erupted in 1914, Jodl marched to the Western Front as an artillery officer, quickly earning renown for his calm under fire. Wounded, decorated, and promoted, he also survived, an achievement in itself amid the carnage. By 1918, as Germany crumbled, he had witnessed horrors that could drain a lifetime of resilience from a normal man. But Jodl was far from ordinary. Gazing at the wreckage of the German army, the humiliating Treaty of Versailles, and the turmoil of the Weimar Republic, he embraced a belief widely shared among his countrymen. Germany had not been vanquished on the battlefield, but betrayed from within. This insidious notion, the so-called stab-in-the-back myth, dictated every decision Jodl made for the next 27 years, and eventually drew him into the orbit of a struggling Austrian painter named Adolf Hitler. During the turbulent 20s, as Germany staggered from crisis to crisis, Jodl methodically climbed the ranks of the Reichswehr, the constrained 100,000-man army allowed by the victorious Allies. He immersed himself in operations, logistics, and the harsh arithmetic of warfare. He married Irma, embraced a disciplined routine of professional excellence, and waited for Germany's resurgence. By the time Hitler seized power in 1933, Jodl had already become a respected staff officer with influential connections. He did not adhere to Nazi ideology and never joined the party, yet he represented something even more valuable to them: a consummate professional soldier, committed to obeying the lawful government of Germany regardless of its leadership. Hitler, ever perceptive to such loyalty, recognized Jodl's potential. By 1939, as Europe teetered toward calamity, Alfred Jodl had been appointed Chief of the Operations Staff of the Armed Forces High Command, or OKW. From this point, his life shifted from that of a soldier to that of a man with blood on his hands. The OKW was more than a military headquarters. It was Hitler's personal command apparatus, and Jodl, positioned just down the hallway from the Führer, became the intermediary who transformed Hitler's volatile pronouncements into precise military directives. Every major wartime operation passed through his desk: the invasion of Poland, the conquests of Denmark and Norway, the lightning strike through France, and the catastrophic gamble of Operation Barbarossa against the Soviet Union. While Jodl occasionally voiced objections, once Hitler decided, he executed, translating madness into operational reality with deadly efficiency, leading to millions of deaths. This is where the moral ambiguity deepens. Jodl was not a frenzied man in brown. He was cultured, contemplative, and disciplined. He read philosophy in his spare moments, penned refined letters to his wife, and truly believed he was serving Germany rather than Hitler personally. His peers acknowledged him as one of the sharpest minds in the entire High Command. And yet, this same refined, intelligent man affixed his name to documents that would shock anyone with a sense of decency. In October of 1942, he endorsed the infamous Commando Order, commanding German forces to execute captured Allied special forces immediately, without trial, even when they wore proper uniforms and had surrendered honorably. This edict flagrantly defied every long-standing rule of war. Soldiers who raised their hands in surrender were marched to ditches and shot in the back of the head. Families received no word of their fate. Each order bore Alfred Jodl's deliberate signature. But the Commando Order was only the beginning. Jodl was equally implicated in the Commissar Order, which instructed German troops invading the Soviet Union to execute captured political officers without delay. He sanctioned directives that reduced Soviet prisoners of war to subhuman status, contributing to the deaths of millions in German custody, most perishing from deliberate starvation and exposure. He approved merciless anti-partisan campaigns across Yugoslavia, Greece, and occupied Soviet territories, resulting in the deaths of vast numbers of civilians, all under the convenient pretext of quelling resistance. Jodl played a part in orchestrating the siege of Leningrad, a city of nearly 3 million which Hitler intended to starve rather than capture. Hundreds of thousands of civilians perished in freezing apartments, scraping wallpaper paste and worse to survive. Jodl was aware. He received the reports. He signed the orders. Week after week, year after year, he continued signing, convincing himself that he was merely a soldier fulfilling his duty. Some defenders of Jodl, and there have always been a few, highlight that he was not part of the command chain for the extermination camps. He did not manage Auschwitz. He did not design gas chambers personally. The industrialized murder of European Jews was executed by the SS, not his office. Technically true. Yet it remains one of the most cynical excuses ever offered for a military officer. Because Jodl spent nearly every day in Hitler's presence, he heard the Führer's rants about exterminating the Jewish people. He read reports from the Eastern Front detailing mobile killing units sending entire villages to mass graves. He understood, as everyone in that inner circle did, precisely what atrocities were being committed in Germany's name. And still, he never resigned. He never protested. He never slowed his work. He continued producing meticulous professional staff plans that enabled the Nazi war machine to slaughter its way across 2 continents. One particularly dark episode reveals the true nature of Jodl beneath his polished military demeanor. In July of 1944, after the failed assassination attempt on Hitler at the Wolf's Lair, Jodl was in the same room when the bomb detonated. Standing only feet from the briefcase, he suffered a concussion and minor injuries. Once recovered, his reaction was not reflection, but fury. He assisted Hitler in hunting down the conspirators with cold, methodical precision. Many of those arrested were colleagues from his own general staff, some even close personal friends. Several were executed by strangulation with piano wire or suspended from meat hooks, filmed for Hitler's private viewing. Jodl never intervened. He returned to planning the defense of a Reich already crumbling around him. By spring of 1945, the war's outcome was undeniable. Soviet troops battled street by street in Berlin. American and British forces had crossed the Rhine. The so-called Thousand-Year Reich, having lasted 12 years, was dying violently in its own ruins. Hitler ended his life with a bullet on the 30th of April. His designated successor, Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz, established a phantom government in the small northern town of Flensburg, attempting to negotiate a separate peace with the Western Allies while continuing hostilities against the Soviets. It was a delusional effort, and the Allies were uninterested. They demanded unconditional surrender in writing. Consequently, on the night of May 6th into May 7th, 1945, Alfred Jodl arrived at a small red schoolhouse in the French city of Reims, where General Dwight Eisenhower had set up headquarters to receive the document that would officially end the Second World War in Europe. The scene has been captured countless times, yet the human details remain striking. Jodl entered in his dress uniform, his expression a perfect mask of military composure. He seated himself at a plain wooden table draped with a green cloth. He examined the surrender document with care, as was his custom, because Jodl never signed anything without scrutinizing it. He lifted a pen, inscribed his name with meticulous care, and rose from the table. Eisenhower, refusing to share the room with him, considered Jodl unworthy of personal attention. Later, he was escorted into Eisenhower's office, where the American general asked bluntly if he understood the terms of surrender. Jodl affirmed that he did. With a curt nod, Eisenhower dismissed him. And just like that, after nearly 6 years of worldwide conflict and tens of millions of deaths, the war in Europe had ended. That signature belonged to a man who, in 17 months, would hang from a rope. The Nuremberg trials commenced in November 1945, and Jodl was among the principal defendants facing the tribunal. Alongside him sat Hermann Göring, Rudolf Hess, Joachim von Ribbentrop, and the remainder of the surviving Nazi leadership. The prosecution's case against Jodl rested largely on the documents he had signed: the commando order, his involvement in the Commissar order, and the directives authorizing the cruel treatment of Soviet prisoners and civilians. In his defense, Jodl repeated the argument echoed in countless war crimes trials since: he was merely a soldier. He insisted he was only implementing policy, not creating it. He highlighted that he had never truly embraced Nazi ideology, that he occasionally opposed Hitler's worst military choices, and that he had served his country with utmost professionalism. His second wife, Louisa, whom he had married following the death of his first wife Irma, attended the proceedings daily, watching him marshal the same precise intelligence he had once employed to orchestrate invasions. But the judges were unconvinced. Convicted on all 4 counts, conspiracy to wage aggressive war, crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity, Jodl faced a resounding judgment. The verdict underscored that no soldier was ever obliged to commit such crimes, and he could not shield himself behind an abstract notion of unquestioning obedience. It was a condemnation of thunderous force carrying the ultimate sentence, death. Jodl received the ruling with stoic composure. His final plea was to be executed as a soldier by firing squad, rather than the ignominious hanging reserved for common criminals. The Allied tribunal refused. They intended his death to humiliate. Germany was to witness its generals swinging from ropes, for in their eyes, that was precisely what they were. On the night of October 15th, 1946, Hermann Göring outwitted the hangmen by biting down on a concealed cyanide capsule in his cell, inciting furious outrage among the Allies. In the early hours of October 16th, one by one, the condemned were led from their cells to the gymnasium, where wooden gallows awaited. Joachim von Ribbentrop went first, followed by Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel, Jodl's superior and friend, and then several others. When Jodl's turn arrived around 2 in the morning, he climbed the platform unassisted and delivered his final words, saluting Germany. The American hangman, Sergeant John Woods, activated the trap. Witnesses reported that several of the executions were poorly executed, with some condemned men taking agonizing minutes to die, as doctors observed, waiting for their hearts to cease. Yet the story took a strange turn years later. In 1953, a German denazification court in Munich re-examined Jodl's case and reached a startling conclusion. They found him not guilty of crimes under international law and posthumously cleared his name. Property confiscated by the Allies was briefly returned to his widow. The decision was politically explosive, and the Bavarian state government overturned it under American pressure. Still, the legal whisper persisted, a quiet hint that perhaps the Allies had hanged the wrong man, or at least convicted him on questionable grounds. So, what can we make of Alfred Jodl? The careful, intelligent, cultured general who endorsed orders that led to millions of deaths and yet died on an American gallows asserting his innocence. The honest truth is that he was precisely what he claimed to be, and that, tragically, is why he received the fate he did. He was a professional soldier who placed loyalty above conscience, obedience above morality, and the preservation of his career above the lives of countless strangers. He told himself he was fulfilling his duty, and the universe ultimately presented him with the reckoning. The lesson of Jodl's life is not simply that following orders can be wrong. It is that intelligence without courage, skill without ethics, and discipline without humanity can transform even the most cultured individual into a mass murderer in a crisply pressed uniform. Alfred Jodl imagined himself the brain of the German army. In reality, he was its willing accomplice. And when the trap door opened beneath him in that Nuremberg gymnasium, history delivered the answer he had spent a lifetime avoiding. Some commands, no matter who issues them, are too monstrous for a decent man to sign. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.